Welcome to another episode of Spooky Sundays with Sophia. I hate myself. If you haven't seen last episode, please go check that out. If you have, be sure to keep watching. So for this week's episode, I'm actually going to do a spooky book recommendations. So I love to read. I read all the time. Reading is probably one of my favorite activities to do. I've read many spooky books in my life and I've enjoyed an abundant. So I'm here to give you my recommendations. This is going to be a very chill, relaxed video. And if you don't like to read, sorry. But if you do, this is for you. By the way, if you guys want to add me on Goodreads, my name's sophiakleo, just like my YouTube channel, my Instagram. Give me an ad and I'll add you guys back. We can look at each other's books and it's my favorite thing to do. I love it. Let's just get started with this book recommendations for the spooky season. This is not in order at all. I'm not like going from spookiest to least spooky. This is just like a random order. So first book I have is American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. So there's a lot to say about this book. American Psycho is probably one of my favorite books like of all time. Up there with like East of Eden. But East of Eden's not spooky, so it's not going to be here. American Psycho is about this Manhattan investment banker that's extremely shallow, extremely confident, but at the same time very insecure. You can see that throughout the book. The book is very, very well written and very descriptive. It looks like you're reading something that a psychopath wrote. It's so descriptive, and throughout the book just gets more insane, and you kind of find yourself questioning the reliability of Patrick Bateman, who's the main character. You're like, is this really happening, or is he just going insane in his head? So I don't want to spoil a lot of things, but he ends up killing a few people, a lot of like sexual gruesome things going on, but it's really spooky and very dark, and it's kind of creepy because this probably goes on in real life. There's a lot of people in Wall Street and people just around you that are psychopaths and probably have these crazy thoughts, so terrifying. Book number 2 is called My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. So I actually picked up this book this time last year, and I was actually strolling through Barnes & Noble with Harrison. I was trying to find a book to read for the spooky season. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of got this book because of the cover. I know you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but this time I made a really good choice. Look at how cool that is. There's like a VHS tape on it, and it looks like just something straight out of the 80s. It's really cool. I was very, very surprised by how good this book was. So basically, this book is about two girls, Abby and Gretchen, who have been best friends since 4th grade. They've been through everything together, they're really close. And then one night, them and a little friend group, which like included other girls with them, decided to take LSD. They were out in like a lake house and everything was going well. Girls couldn't even feel the LSD, it didn't even affect them. But Gretchen goes missing. So everyone starts to freak out. They're like, where's Gretchen? We lost her. She's probably tripping balls and we can't find her. So the next morning they find Gretchen in the woods, and ever since then everything changed. Gretchen starts acting very odd, very dark. She stops showering. Very weird stuff is going on, and Abby concludes like later on throughout the book that Gretchen is possessed by the devil or some demon. And it's very dark, but also very funny in like a very dark way. So there's dark satire with genuine creepiness. I mean, it's not like a terrifying book, at least not to me. Some people do find it really scary, especially one scene in it. I'm not gonna tell you guys, but it's freaking terrifying. I really like it. I think you guys would enjoy it. It's very spooky. It gave me those like spooky comfy feels, you know? This book is filled with pop culture references, especially from the 80s. I read somewhere that it's like Heather / The Exorcist combined into a book, and that's exactly what this is. So if you guys like the movie Heathers and enjoyed Exorcist, it's like those two combined into one. It's very good. I highly recommend this. Book 3 that I will be recommending is called In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I read this book in high school, so it's been like 3 years, something like that, maybe more. It's creepy because it's based on a true story. It's about the 1959 murders of the Clutter family in Kansas. So those murders happened, they were brutal. I think there was like 4 members of the family, I may be wrong, but there was like 2 young girls, a wife, husband. They like get tied up, choked, sexually harassed. This is kind of about the 2 murderers, Richard and Perry, in their quest to murder and then get away from it. It's very descriptive, it's very informative too. Truman Capote obviously writes amazing. He's like one of the best authors ever. And he spent like 10 years writing this book or something crazy like that. So it ended up really good. If you guys like true crime or just crime in general, you guys would really enjoy this. The next book I recommend is called The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. Of course, this is like one of the most overused horror books ever. I mean, it's even becoming a Netflix show, I think. The story revolves around 4 main characters. I forgot their names, so I'm gonna look that up right now. One sec. Okay. Dr. Montague, which was a scholar looking for evidence of the supernatural and the paranormal. Just, he was investigating that stuff. There is Theodora, which is a lighthearted, flamboyant woman. Eleanor, who is the main character, like the main character. A lonely, homeless girl, well acquainted with poltergeists, so she's used to this ghost stuff. And Luke, who is the future heir of Hill House. This story starts with everyone going to Hill House, going to stay there so they can find out if there's any paranormal occurrences. Throughout the book, the main character, Eleanor, is the one who is the most susceptible kind of to these paranormal experiences. Everyone in this book sometimes sees lights flicker, hears doors shut. What was that? I'm so lame. But Eleanor is the one who starts to just go a little bit crazy, and it just gets really deep and spooky. So I really recommend this. It's very good. The next book I'm going to recommend is actually called Wait Till Helen Comes by Mary Downing Hahn. I don't have the book with me because I read this when I was around 11 and I got it from my school library in Texas. I will never forget this book. This is probably the spookiest book I've ever read, just because I was like really young and it just really stuck with me. So the book is basically about 2 stepsisters, Molly and Heather, who do not get along at all because Heather, which is like the little sister, can't get over that Heather's dad moved on to Molly's mom, basically. So they're always fighting. Heather's always blaming Molly for everything that's going on. One day, the whole family moves to this new house that used to be a church with a graveyard. The house is pretty spooky, and Molly notices that right away pretty much because she's older. I think she's like around 12 in the book. I'm not sure, but Heather's really little. I think she's 7. Soon after, Heather befriends this little dead girl called Helen. They're the same age, their parents died from the same thing, and they become friends. Molly notices that Helen is very toxic to Heather. She keeps telling her what to do, and it gets really creepy when Molly tries to interfere because Helen doesn't like that one bit. I don't want to spoil the big ending. You guys should really check it out. Next one is called Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Everyone knows what Coraline is. I even have a doll. Isn't she cute? So I picked up the book a while ago, a little bit after the movie came out, and I read it and I freaking loved it. It was so good. It's safe to say that the book and the movie are actually really similar in how good they are. Like, usually the movie is so much crappier than the book, but the movie was really good, at least to me. It's about this little girl called Coraline Jones. She moves into this flat with her family. The flat has crazy flamboyant neighbors that tell her not to go into this like door she found, this little door in her flat, and she goes in anyway, obviously, because anyone would, right? Honestly, if I was little, I probably would. I would be like, adults not letting me have fun. They just want to take fun away from me. She goes in and she meets her other mother, which is a slightly skinnier, taller version than her real mother. But the other mother has buttons for eyes, and ew. I mean, imagine that. Terrifying. Everything goes well. The other world, other house that she lives in is identical to her house except cooler. She has more toys, better food. Her mom cooks all the time. Her dad's not a hassle. Her mom's not a pain. And she loves it. She loves visiting. Until her other mother asks her to sew buttons for eyes on Coraline's. Coraline's like, hell the fuck no. I ain't doing that. Crazy shit happens. You guys have to read the book or watch the movie. The next book I'm going to talk about is called Dracula by Bram Stoker. This book is awesome. It's a gothic, spooky, really spooky vibes. So dark, so gothic. I love that kind of vibe. The story is told in a series of diary entries, letters, etc. So they're like little chunks of different people writing to each other. So the main story is about Jonathan Harker, who is doing some real estate transaction and goes to visit Count Dracula in his castle in Transylvania. People tell him to avoid it at all costs, or like, do not go. They give him garlic, yet they're speaking in a different language so he doesn't understand them. He goes in the castle. Dracula is a very charismatic older man. He's very enticing, kind of like a vampire should be. A few days later pass and Harker realizes that he's held captive by Dracula. There's no other way to explain it. And soon after he realizes Dracula's a vampire. I'm not going to say any more just because I don't want to spoil it, but it's just very spooky vibes about vampires if you like vampires. It's about death and destruction. If you like that, you'll like this. Next book I'm going to talk about is actually not really a book. It's just a collection of short stories. It's basically Grimm's fairy tales. That's where all your freaking fairy tales come from. This. I really love this because I love Disney and I always like to read the actual like original story of the Disney movie, and it's so freaking dark. Some of my favorites are Sleeping Beauty, Little Snow White, The Six Swans, Rumpelstiltskin, The Fox and the Cat. A lot of these. There's so many stories, and look at the cover. It's so pretty, and like the pages are golden. I love it. If you don't want to read a whole book and just have to like dedicate your time to an entire book, I really recommend this, because if you want to like get your spooky vibe on, just whip this out, read a story or two a night, and just feel completely awesome in your heart. It's great. I have one more book. This book, pronounced Nosferatu, is the book I'm currently reading for Halloween. It's a very fat book, as you can tell. I don't really have time to read that much of it, so I'm kind of at the beginning, but I'm recommending this because, first of all, I just found out Joe Hill is actually Stephen King's son. Isn't that cool? Like, that's so cool. I just found that out. But so far, it's really amazing. It had me hooked on page 1. It has really high reviews, so I'm sure you guys will like this. It's basically about this creepy vampire dude that steals children's souls. Anyways, guys, that's it for the book recommendations video. After I finish this book, I also want to read a few more spooky books for Halloween. So please leave down recommendations of books you think I would like. Spooky books. It doesn't even have to be scary. It can just be like spoopy or like spooky vibes or just set in fall. Just anything like that. If you guys know anything of that sort, please leave me recommendations below. I'm sure I will love them if you guys recommend them to me. So, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys on next spooky episode. Bye!